Coming up on FTC Recap, Nick and Kevin from AndyMark are here to break down and take your questions, of course, in the Freight Frenzy game design, their new products they have coming out, and, of course, support through AndyMark as well. Both live and those watching on YouTube, we're going to have some awesome $25 AndyMark gift card giveaways to do. So stay tuned. This is going to be a great show. This is FTC Recap.
Giving you a voice.
Making it loud our own way.
Welcome to the fun.
We'd like to thank Stryker for their continued support of First Updates Now. Stryker's Internship Portal is now open and available. Discover internships and rotational programs located around the world, including their headquarters in Michigan, when you go to careers.stryker.com and click on Students and Graduates. We'd also like to thank Kettering University. Kettering University is where robotics students come for their education. Over 30% of those who attend Kettering University were in high school robotics, and you can keep going with their BattleBots, VexU, esports, and First Mentorship programs. If you are a U.S. student grades 8 through 12, scan the QR code to stay up to date on info and events happening at Kettering and get a free Kettering t-shirt when you sign up by December 12th, 2021. Welcome to FTC Recap. I'm your host, Tyler Olds, and today we're talking with Nick Lawrence and Kevin Kaloje from AndyMark, who I've known for a long time throughout the programs, and fortunate enough to both call my friend. And we're going to be talking all about Freight Frenzy with AndyMark, including their processes in the game itself, new AndyMark products as well, and then what some of you seen, maybe, who knows, maybe what products we're going to talk about today, but we'll see. Well, of course, we'll discover the best way that teams can help get support through the Freight Frenzy game field, and of course AndyMark parts as well. As mentioned, by the way, we do have a $25 AndyMark gift card. We'll talk to you a little bit later if you're watching live how to win that, and on YouTube we'll promo that as well too. And of course, if you've got any questions for Nick or Kevin in chat, make sure you type them in. We'd love for our live audience to ask a few questions so we can get a little bit more of what's going on. But let's do a brief intro before we get into it. First off, Kevin, you and I go way back to high school, actually. You and I competed against each other in high school back in the day. I know this is like going to be the FTC First Boomer show here. So but we got, we've been friends a long time. You're Director of Engineering at AndyMark. So take a moment to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your first journey.
Yeah, that's correct. Tyler, thank you for the introduction. Yeah, we've known each other for a long time. I've been around First for over 20 years now. Started as a student in Hammond, FRC 71. Spent a lot of time up in Milwaukee, and now I'm here at AndyMark, living the dream, and get to work with a great group of people, and hopefully getting more exposure to the FTC community after today.
Absolutely. And Nick, of course, you and I have known each other for quite a while too, well over a decade now. And you've even contributed to fun content. A lot of people have seen you through the Robo Sports Network online as well with your great commentary for that. And you're a mechanical systems designer at AndyMark. Many may not know, by the way, too, that you were really the key driver behind the compliant wheel as well. Something that's, I think, pretty cool that a lot of FTC teams use as well. So anything else I'm missing from you, Nick?
That's pretty well sums what I do these days. I also started as a student, started actually way back in 2005 as an FLL student. Then I was on FRC Team 1503 up in Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada, when I was in high school. Spent some time in college with 610, and then helped start 5406 Celtex up there in Hamilton. And now I'm a full-time strategy and design mentor for 3940 Cybertooth, and definitely really also living the dream. Get to work with a lot of really cool people, work on a lot of unique projects from FRC products to FTC field components. It's definitely a lot of fun here at AndyMark.
Do you have the nickname Captain Canada? That's what somebody called you in chat.
Yeah, Captain Canada, Commander Canada as well. I was actually Peyton. He was one of my former interns back in the day when he was in college as well.
I wasn't sure, just like a weird Marvel What If episode or something like that. Like, what if Nick Lawrence became Captain Canada or something like that? Awesome. Well,
that would be wild.
Yeah, for
I could
sure.
see that.
Right? Yeah, totally. If we can Photoshop Nick out at some point, that'd be great. So let's dive into it. The Freight Frenzy game, of course, just came out just over a week ago, and very excited to see some different elements. A lot of people asking about Robotics, which we'll get into a little bit with that as well. But talk to us a little bit more about AndyMark's involvement with Freight Frenzy, especially when it comes to the game in the field, and specifically breaking down some of the processes as well.
Sure. Well, I don't know if everybody's aware or not, but AndyMark is involved with the development of the game pieces for the field, and we work with the game design committee at first. The game is definitely their vision, and we help bring their vision to reality. So we have weekly meetings with the game design committee to kind of get an idea of what they're looking for and how they want the game to play. And then we try to take their ideas and we do some prototyping and we do some development. We send them some samples and they drive the conversation and we just kind of make it reality. And this was the first year that Nick and myself were involved in that process. And actually as in AndyMark's involvement kind of changed a little bit this year. Those that have been around the First Tech Challenge community for a while probably got to know Danny Blau. He unfortunately left AndyMark for a dream job up at in Milwaukee earlier this year. So we had to kind of fill that position midstream in the season. But we learned a lot over the last few years about how to make these games become reality. And a small team of people here, Nick and myself, plus our project manager, Vanessa, as well as other engineer, Nathan, and just kind of a whole big crew at AndyMark helped make what you see for Freight Frenzy become possible.
So I just want to recap on there. So AndyMark doesn't necessarily design the game itself, but where does it fall in regards to consulting the game itself?
Yeah, that's a good question. With Freight Frenzy, there's definitely some evolution throughout the year. What you see on the field today is not where we started back late last year. It has evolved over time.
Where'd you start back late last year?
I don't know how much I'm allowed to say because some ideas might get recycled in future games.
Into a rush, I hear you.
But the core concepts were there. The idea of delivering packages to the shipping hubs, that was kind of always there. There were some kind of unique elements that I'm sorry didn't make it to the field, but may still make it someday in the future. But compromise is always part of the engineering game, and certainly no exception here on the game field.
I got to ask, and I don't know, Nick, is this something you might be able to chime in? Who the heck came up with the ducks idea? Can you run us through all of that as well? I'm really interested in hearing that.
That's a good one. We've been in the trenches of this one so long that I know that I'm pretty sure it originated with the game design committee themselves. Mm-hmm. They wanted a completely unique, fun game piece that we hadn't seen before because they recognized that. And I'm not speaking on behalf of the GDC, but they recognized that we were going to recycle some game pieces with some twists with the weights in the boxes. But those ducks just kind of sort of was like one of those things that somebody said once and was like, hold on, it seemed to stick for them. And they just kind of stuck ever since. And the whole point of it being a unique element for the teams to interact with kind of fit the bills for that too. Because I don't know, it's duck, it's weird, it's fun, and it's like a weird squishy thing.
I thought it was going to be one of those like supply chains so disrupted right now. You're like, what is something we can just get in just an excess quantity of crazy amounts? And rubber ducks are what came up with all the research or something like that.
That's probably more of the happy accident side of it. I mean, they wanted a rubber duck, and we spent a lot of time like finding different rubber ducks for the game design committee and like sending them samples and like giving them like the banana for scale images. And there were a couple different ones. I mean, some of them were a little bit bigger at one point that they wanted this little tiny thing because they wanted a lot of them on the field at the time. There was like 24 on the field or something like that. And they just want to have a big quantity of them. And the smaller they are, the more reasonable it is to do.
The one thing I just want to ask, and I know this might be more of a first GDC thing, like the other two game pieces seem to be a bit more thematic to what the game actually is. Like that's the only thing that confused me a little bit is how do the ducks really fit into that?
I know that the term livestock was used at one point. Not something you consider ducks typically, but that's kind of where the idea came from.
Makes sense. And I do have to ask a follow-up from Payne in chat. Is there going to be, and I know Nick responded, is there going to be an AM duck like the AM goat? I like that. That might be
there are
popular.
stickers.
We don't want
do have
we
stickers
want the full thing, Nick. Come on.
with a bandana or maybe a pinwheel hat or
Yeah.
something that says AndyMark on it.
Yeah, there we go. So
That'd be fun.
awesome. Is there anything else from? I know this is something that with Danny leaving, and we've had him on in the past talking about this. Is there anything though from like both of you, coming in? You both have been obviously around FTC for a long time that you've learned from previous years or learned from Danny departing when you looked at applying things into this year's game?
Yeah, definitely. There was a lot of reflection on last year's game and the year before that led directly to a lot of improvements in our manufacturing process this year. Design for manufacturing was a key theme as we went along, that every choice had the manufacturing side considered. Not that it wasn't before, but with extra eyes on it this year, there was definitely more scrutiny than we've had in the past, and we think that the resulting product is of a higher quality than we've been able to produce before. Many of the components are being made in-house at AndyMark. There's a few things that are beyond our current capabilities, but for the most part, everything is going through AndyMark's hands at some point in the process, and that all starts with design. So the time that Nick and Nathan really put into the testing and adapting it, especially on the carousel, and I'll let Nick talk about the carousel a little bit more because that's kind of his baby. But the iterations that they put into the design to make sure that every little detail was considered and why it was considered, for the right reasons. Not just, this is an inch because it's convenient. No, it's an inch because, the GDC wanted it in that range, but it also is, why is it not 3/4 of an inch or an inch and a half? And sometimes those things were done in those other configurations and tested, and so everything has a reason. So I'll get down off the high horse and let Nick talk
Nick,
about the details.
Tell us more about it, man.
Yeah, springing off even right down to the size of the disc for the carousel. We went down to 15 inches from 16. The game design committee had like a bit of a range, and they wanted an about 16-inch disc. And we fed back with, well, what if it was 15 inches? We can fit more of them on a sheet when routing them on our CNC router at AndyMark, because it gives us room for the tooling capacitor instead of them being exactly 16 and having to stagger them, which was really nice. The carousel is not the first mechanism they had for introducing game pieces. Now, I can't tell you what the other one was because it might come back one day.
All right.
But it was really cool, and this is still like a core tenet of the original game concept of having something that the robots interact with directly to introduce game pieces, whether it be the ducks or the team shipping elements onto the field. That core tenet's still there in this game, and at the time of design of the carousel, the iteration of the game at the time allowed for kind of really rapid introduction of the game pieces. So we spent a lot of time making sure that mechanism was stable at speed. And that was robust enough to deal with serious robot interaction events where robots are flying across the field on never S20s or even faster. So the thing is pretty stout. I mean, the sheet metal brackets you can see in the corner there, they're all made of 1/8-inch aluminum, bent flanges to keep them super stout. So it's built to take a beating. Realistically, the final iteration of the game, it's probably a little overbuilt for that, and that's a good thing. We'd rather it be nice and stout than the inverse of it being not up to being set up and torn down for a bunch of gameplay. But one of the silliest things, I got to tell the story because I haven't been able to tell the story for months. But at the time of designing the carousel, we thought it was going to be spun a lot faster. And we fought a little bit of resonance on this mechanism after a robot would stop spinning it down. Basically, we had a lot of testing with a 4-inch AndyMark compliant wheel and a Nubs 20, Nubs 3.7. And as soon as the robot would back away from spinning this mechanism, a lot of the early prototypes we had, the disc would wobble and rattle as soon as the robot stopped touching it. And we tried all kinds of things, different disc materials, lightning patterns in the discs, lengths of the inner pipe, different dampening methods, the way it was held at the field, all kinds of stuff. And And it turns out that it was actually the planar interaction of the outer bearing, the red or blue pipes in the current iteration, to the cap that holds the disc on. That as soon as it wasn't loaded, it would develop this, this resonance where it would wobble and shake and such. And this is my favorite simple, like, free fix of things we iterated through on the field. The pipe that supports that is cut at a 10-degree angle on purpose, so that there isn't this flat plane for those two surfaces to sit on. It sits like this, and it just sort of kind of rests on a little bit of that surface. And I was like super proud that we came up with this really simple solution months ago. And I've been waiting months for people to have these in their hands, and I can tell them the story of, like, yeah, that's actually on purpose. We thought about making sure it didn't rattle and do horrendous things when robots stopped interacting with it.
It's interesting to say that because so we were at the Robot in 30 Hours Challenge with the Bulldogs going on, and that was an interesting thing, was trying to find out what speed essentially you could spin the carousel at and still get the ducks to essentially be stable and not completely fly off the carousel. So that's interesting you talk about that, because we definitely experienced that in testing of just like trying to find that right sweet spot for it. I'm sure teams will discover that as well too as they go through.
And that's intentional. We showed some we showed some prototypes that had like a wood surface and a polycarb surface, and a lot of them were really stable. And one of the videos we showed was this PVC foam top, and the game design committee was like, "Hold on, there's a speed limit. We really like that. It actually is an artificial like limit of how many game pieces can be introduced at a time, and there's this trade-off of like approaching that speed limit and trying to fly close to the sun that the game design committee really liked. And we liked it too, because the surface is slippery so that the game pieces like don't get stuck on the scraper arm when they're being introduced as well.
Well, is there anything else from the Frenzy game? Any stories, asides, or anything like that you want to talk about?
There's a lot we could.
Yeah, how much time you got?
Well, give me one more. Give me something else cool that the community might not know about.
Well, I think one of the tenets of game design or game development that has come over the last few years is recyclability and reusability. And there's a few things on this year's game that you probably have from previous years or look familiar to you from previous years. Two really good examples are the other two main parts of the game: the barriers themselves and the bottoms of the shipping hubs. Sorry. So the barriers use the molded piece, the bracket that the pipes fit into, is a derived design from the bracket that was used in Skystone for the crossbars.
Sure.
So it's that same mold was able to be modified a little bit and reused for this purpose. And that came about through testing various ways of attaching these barriers to the floor. At one point, the barriers were a large extruded piece that was all one solid member that kind of looked like a zigzag, like an upside down E almost. Then once the idea of what is this barrier doing was kind of boiled down to, well, it's really just two pipes. How do we put two pipes in place, and how do we secure them? So various ideas were tested, and suddenly I think it was Nathan said, let's try this barrier bracket or the Skystone bracket, and lo and behold, a few modifications, it was a really good solution for what the GDC was looking for. Likewise, the base of the shipping hubs was looking for something similar but not the same as the wobble goal. Similar proportions, a little bit different, but different interaction. Whereas the wobble goal, was easy to tip over and kind of rock back and forth. There needed to be more of a kind of dead zone for the shipping hubs. So similarly to the bracket, the same mold was able to be modified a little bit to reuse parts and pieces to make a different piece unique to this game, but with a similar form factor.
One of the things that we noticed too, interacting with it, is just it's kind of crazy the stability on it, because it's like you can stack a whole lot and it will stay just in its upright position, but then you just tap it just a little bit and it will immediately just flop back over on there. When you're looking at teams and how they're approaching the challenge for it, is there anything that you've noticed in regards to how the stability of the shipping areas are working out, or any advice you might have for teams?
Yeah, definitely. Like once you have actually almost every pro-order has left our facilities, which is something that's cool. So most teams have their game sets at this point. Just sit and play with it for a while. Once you have your boxes assembled, and like there's a pretty significant difference of what a heavy box does versus a light box does in different locations on the goal. It's not intuitive at all. When you have, like, you would think that a heavy cube up top would have the most effect of keeping it rock forward. It's not necessarily true. Just like, I know it sounds like a dead horse, but sit and play with it for as long as you are like willing to do so. You will learn a lot by just arranging game pieces in different ways on that, on those shipping hubs for sure.
Well, let's start moving on. Before we get to our next segment, we do want to thank one of our show sponsors, Kettering University, for supporting fun. So here's a little bit more about how you can graduate from Kettering debt-free.
When I was considering where to go to college, one of the biggest things for me was figuring out how I was going to be able to pay for college. And it wasn't really until I came to Kettering to one of the Dog Days of Summer events that I figured out how I was going to be able to do that. And it was actually because of this senior chemical engineering student. She was getting ready to graduate, and she had told me about all of her phenomenal experiences, both on co-op and here on campus. But more importantly, she told me that she was going to graduate debt-free. And that was an eye-opener for me. That was the first time I'd ever heard that from a college student, and so that's when I knew that I was sold. So really from there, as soon as I came to Kettering, I knew that that was going to be my goal. I wanted to graduate debt-free. And I did that through a variety of ways. First, of course, the co-op experience was a tremendous help. But I even looked at ways to work here on campus. So I was a federal work study student. I worked in a variety of organizations, and that not only gave me the extra funds, but also different opportunities to meet people and understand our resources here at Kettering. Also looking at scholarships not only here at Kettering University, but even from my hometown and other sources, all of this cumulatively helped me to graduate debt-free.
And thanks again to Kettering University for their support in First Updates Now. So we're back again with Nick and Kevin from AndyMark, and we're going to be talking about some of the new products AndyMark has come out with for Freight Frenzy. Some you've seen. There might be a couple teased here today as well, so looking forward to seeing that as well. At the Robot in 30 Hours with the Bulldogs, we featured a few of these products that you sent us. The towel riser chassis, which we really liked for getting over the barriers. I know there was a spin take and a few other things as well. So talk to us about some of the new products that AndyMark is coming out with. Excited to see some things that are out now and what might be coming out in the future as well.
Sure. So yeah, as you mentioned, the tile riser plate, I happen to have one here, is a new version of our long-term tile runner FTC chassis. And the most different thing about it, obviously, is the high ground clearance that you have under the middle. And that was something that we've been looking at in our tile runner designs for a while. Six-wheel drive will go over some things, and treads will go over some things, but sometimes you want that Mecanum robot that may have trouble with a few of those obstacles. So this was kind of a natural evolution of the tile runner design to rise it or raise it up, and it became the tile riser. Perfect for this year's game with barriers.
Yeah,
but
along with that, I got to ask you from your testing perspective. Obviously,
yeah.
AndyMark, is involved in the game that we just talked about as well too. So, I mean, are you building the field and then kind of designing from there, or how does that process, the product design process, work in that?
Yeah, a little bit both ways.
Sure.
Like I said, it was something that we've been kind of had that idea in the back of our head for a while, but didn't have a good reason for it yet, because there wasn't a game that really needed anything with clearance. And then once the barriers became an apparent part of this year's game, it kind of makes sense. Let's do some testing and see if this really makes a difference. And that was something that we spent a lot of time on, was how is the barrier going to hold up during gameplay, and how are robots going to interact with it, and where are they going to get stuck? What happens if they get stuck? How are the different ways that they can get stuck, and how do they get unstuck? So there was a lot of robot playtime, you could say,
Sure.
around this product and this game. But it also led us to kind of refreshing the entire Tile Runner line. Last year, we introduced a configurator for the Tile Runner to make it a little bit easier to get exactly what a team is looking for. And this year, we've taken that to the next step with having 4 different main configurations: the 4-wheel drive, the 6-wheel drive, the Tile Riser, and the Tread Runner. But then giving opening up all of the gearing options and all of the wheel options. So if you want a robot that has 60 durometer stealth wheels plus Omni wheels and has all the different gearing options, that you can find that option on one page now. And there's still some Easter eggs and prosumer ways to use the product as well. But we think with the pandemic last year, this is really a time where a lot of institutional knowledge might be lost, and new teams are coming in, new students are coming in, new mentors are coming in. So we really wanted to focus a little bit this year on how does our customer use our product, and how can we help our customer. So that's where you see the genesis of some of these new landing pages that we have on the website.
Sure.
For what are the different things that we have to offer to an FTC team to play this game specifically. And then also this week, we just rolled out a new page specifically about the chassis. The one that I think the viewers are seeing now, that goes into a little bit of detail as to when is it appropriate to use which version of the Tile Runner, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of each. So there's a little bit of information about the 6-wheel version, the 4-wheel version, the Tile Riser version, and even the Tread Runner, along with some ideas about the different gearing and the gear ratios and how that plays into the robot that you want to build. And along with those pages, we also have a series of videos that are coming out, kind of what we're calling the How Do I series of videos that'll be on our YouTube page, where we go into a little bit of detail about how do you pick a gear ratio, or how do you pick a motor, how do you build an intake. I think Nick can expand about that a little bit. He was instrumental in filming some of those videos, but we really want to make
on the last one too.
Yeah, we really want to make sure that teams have the information that they need to build a robot that they are capable of building.
Definitely been a pretty big, not a focused shift. Like, we've always been, in the game of education at AndyMark, but it's more of a laser focus than it used to be to produce this content for teams in several different ways. We've definitely learned a lot in the last couple of years, especially being in pandemic land, about how content is consumed and what our customers are looking for. That's why we have like this multi-pronged approach of having short YouTube videos with these how-do-Is on everything from here is what a Tile Riser is, all the way right down to how to break chain, to these web pages for people who are especially these web pages are great when we're on the phone with a customer and they're sitting in front of their computer. We can point them to these kind of web pages and say, hey, this is kind of where the genesis of these ideas come from, and some of our recommended configurations of how to use these drivetrains, and other things.
I do want to follow up from the question I paid had in chat, and I apologize if you did cover it, sorry, but how does the Tread Runner do with the barrier? Have you tested it on there?
Yeah, early in the development of the barriers, one of the first drivetrains we drove over it was the Tread Runner, because we're like, oh, terrain, drive the Tread Runner. As long as you keep it straight, it works great because it has continuous treads all the way over it. But much like the Tile Runner, there are configurations where it can get high centered. When it's sitting, sideways and the treads aren't in contact with the ground, just like, the Tile Runner with the wheels, same issue applies. So if you keep it straight going over it, it trucks over it just fine. But with many low clearance drivetrains that exist in the market, the Tread Runner also can get beached if it gets a little bit off kilter.
Well, let's talk about some of the other products that AndyMark has released, and of course we'll tease a couple ones coming as well.
For sure. I I've got a couple of them here on my desk. One of them, we actually sent a couple of them to the Kettering Robot in 3 Days team alongside a familiar product, are these little spin take devices. Now, we have them in 3 flavors currently. We have one for a 5mm hex. We have one that is our nub bore pattern that bolts up with all of our nubs and any other 16mm based motion product. And one that is a press fit for a half-inch hex teams or half-inch hex shaft, which is primarily actually directed towards first robotics competition teams because it's like the standard shaft you use there. But we see enough first tech challenge robots that have a bunch of half-inch hex components in them. Sometimes it's repurposed churro, sometimes it's aluminum half-inch hex that we're like, well, if we're going to make one of the boards, make them all, since we can make them in reasonable quantities where we can get a low volume of them made and kind of see how they do. These are great because they're pretty similar to the way that a lot of those like quintessential FTC intakes we've seen over the past years, where it's like a pipe that has two pieces of surgical tubing kind of axially opposite from each other that are cable tied in. They have these little paddles that are nice and flexible, that are really good for conforming around game pieces. But also what's nice is that you can start it vertically in the very front of your robot, and it stays inside that frame perimeter. And then as it rotates, it can come outside that frame perimeter and be that paddle to bring game pieces in to the robot. They're actually made of the exact same 45A durometer silicone that the original Entraption stars are made from, sure, and the original 2-inch compliant wheels that were water jet, like 4 years ago at this point. That same material. It comes back again in more AndyMark products because we love the stuff.
Yeah, I just want to mention the Entraption wheels as well too. That's actually something that I know the Bulldogs team found very valuable and used as one of their primary intake mechanisms as well too.
Yeah, and that product evolved a little bit. It got a half-inch hex upgrade way back in 2017, and when we knew that the game pieces were going to be hard and irregular for Freight Frenzy, we kind of snuck this onto the website, in like May or June, where we came out with that nub bore version of the Entraption star, you're making it more compatible and accessible for those first tech challenge teams. Again, our goal of accessible products for everybody kind of showed up there with that product too, and it paid off. It seems to work really well with those game pieces.
Very cool. Any other products you want to highlight?
We have a few.
All right.
Kevin, you want to go first with the first one?
Yeah. So, we have a few things that are not quite ready yet. We're waiting on inventory, but we can give you a little bit of a sneak peek as to what's coming in the next month or so. We do have a few new, some of you may have discovered it already on the Tile Runner, the FTC chassis page. There is a Never Rest 14 option, Orbital 14 option that is on that page. It is not available yet. We're waiting on the shipment to come in, but the Orbital 14 will be a new option for the tread runners and the tile runners and the tile risers. But along with the Orbital 14, we'll also have an Orbital 51 and an Orbital 256 available for those really high reduction use cases. So maybe you're putting an arm on this robot that you want to use to take your intake and put the balls and cubes onto the shipping hubs. You might need that extra reduction. That'll be coming probably towards the end of October, mid to late October. So that's one big one that's coming soon. I think, Nick, you've got some samples, prototypes of another one that's coming soon.
At AndyMark, we love stamped sheet metal parts, right? Because they're easy for us to source, and we can offer them at inexpensive prices for teams. What I have in my hand is not sheet metal. They're actually laser cut prototypes of a couple gussets that the teams have been asking for a couple years. We basically put out a big print package. These are just 2 of them. I think we have like 6 or 7 that are coming, that are compatible with our S3 building system. I'm trying to get this off high contrast surface here. But this one is a nice side mount with that same bolt pattern that in our S3 system, that base 16mm bolt circle, or base 16mm bolt pattern, sorry. That is compatible with the Never Rest Orbital series gear motors, as well as the Never Rest Sport series of gearboxes. They share the same mount pattern. An Easter egg of this one is it also has a press fit for a 7/8 OD bearing. So It kind of is a 3-in-1 gusset out of flat sheet metal that's coming, in the next few weeks or so. And then we also have a classic mount for the Never S, 40 and 60 classic gear motors to mount in the same way to those S3 beams or to the side of a tile riser or tile runner that uses that. I guess I should get this lined up if I'm going to talk about it. That same bolt pattern we have through all of our First Tech Challenge offering products. And we also have a variety of cute little tiny bearing mount gussets that are coming as well. Same 60 millimeter bolt pattern. This one is sized for a 12 millimeter bearing, which is the same OD bearing that's used in the tile runner, the tile riser, the tread runner. That's 6 mil ID bearing that is kind of the foundation of motion in the S3 building system that AndyMark has. There's more than these. These are just a few of them that are going to supplement the S3 gussets that we've had for making structures. It's just gussets that make motion a little bit easier, that are similar to gussets we've used in first robotics competition robots,
Sure.
just more appropriately sized for First Tech Challenge robots. Mm-hmm. And then another one that I'm super excited about because we've been working on it for like 18 months are more affordable and higher strength nubs. One of the pieces of feedback we've gotten from our community is they want a higher quality, hub or nub product from us that has the tap holes in it and has better fits on the 6 mil D shaft. And we heard that a lot, and we put in a lot of effort to design super high strength, but still like backwards compatible products. Now, I don't have one in front of me, but the cool thing is they share all of the important design language of using that same 16 millimeter bolt circle, the same 7 mil body width where possible, and they're basically just a little bit bigger. They're 3/4 OD instead of 5/8 OD, and they will come with those holes tapped in them at a much higher quality product. It's one that's a long time coming. We've definitely worked with our suppliers to make sure that they're the right product, and making sure that all the boards are concentric and teams are getting the products they expect. It's been about an 18-month project to bring a nice high quality motion product to market for this one.
Well, I'm sure the community appreciates your work in that. I'm sure they look forward to experiencing that new product as well, too. So very cool. So awesome that we talked about some new products coming in. Before I move on, anything else that we didn't cover?
Those are the big ones.
Is there anyone you didn't plan on that you just want to tell us anyways?
There's definitely a couple that I wish we'd be able to make happen for this year, but keep us in mind for next year. But do keep your eyes peeled on the S3 motion pages. There may be one or two more surprises coming there in the next few weeks as well.
Awesome. Well, a couple last things as we get into it. First off, if you're watching live in chat, if you get any questions for AndyMark, feel free to ask those. We do have a couple in queue that we'll grab in just a little bit. But lastly, second to last, I want to talk about support. And there's kind of this twofold, right? There's support the teams in regards to the field and things that you dealt with in regards to with the GDC and FRC or FTC, and of course there's support in regards to your products as well too. So talk to me about a little bit more about how that works. From talking to other suppliers, support is such a crucial feature because you have somebody that needs that really good mix of customer service and also product knowledge at the same time, right? So how do you handle support, and what do you want to get out to the first community about how people can reach you?
Sure. So, as you're using your field pieces or you're using your AndyMark components, either one, if you have any, certainly if you have any questions about them, you're not sure if you got the right parts, or you're not sure if you're missing parts, or if something doesn't seem right, you can reach out to either customer support at AndyMark.com or preferably support at AndyMark.com. That's the main means of support there. Our customer service department is really good at being able to identify the problem with the customer live, either on the phone or through email. But you'll be dealing with us in the engineering department as well when need be, and we take the time that is needed to get you the answers that you're looking for, or to help you find what you're looking for, even if it's not a problem. So it's something that we take a lot of pride in at AndyMark, and it's a resource that you should definitely be aware of and and use. Don't be afraid to reach out to us. That's why we're here.
Yeah, there's definitely a human at the other end of the phone. When you have, those more than, like, oh, there's those specific technical product questions. You get somebody who has worked on developing the products we sell, as your support person, when you're looking for that technical support, which is really kind of unique to AndyMark, where we wear those multiple hats, where you get somebody who actually builds robots and is on a first team, on the other end of the phone or the other end of the email chain, when dealing with this technical support, part of our company, which I think it's really cool, that you get somebody who's been in your shoes, that can understand oh, I need this thing to connect that thing, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. Help. We totally get that. We're definitely a resource that, like, we recommend taking advantage of, be it by phone or via those emails as well. There's a human on the other end, and we're here to help.
Once again, check it out. Go to AndyMark.com and click the help button. You can find the contact us information right on there. Who knows? Maybe you'll get Nick or Kevin on the other line as well. Very cool. Before we get into things, we are going to be starting a giveaway for a $25 AndyMark gift card, which is pretty awesome. So if you're interested in winning that, live, YouTube will have some instructions for you as well, too. I got some inspiration from somebody in chat, so I think the keyword is going to be the AM-duck for you. We'll make the keyword for that. We'll draw for that in a little bit. Subscribers do get an additional chance to win as well, so if you're interested in that, help fun, stay loud, live, and independent. We appreciate that. So while you enter the giveaway, we're going to take your questions. We're going to be grabbing your questions next, any of the ones that we didn't do. We do want to also thank our next show sponsor, Stryker, for their continued support of fun. So summer 2022 internships are actually just opening up now, and they also have some other great programs and some cool featured disciplines. So Stryker really takes care of their interns, including covering housing as well, too. So if you are looking at maybe exploring some different parts of the United States, headquarters in Kalamazoo, Michigan, but they got stuff all over the world, actually. Go check them out at careers.stryker.com. You can go work for a leading medical technology manufacturer that believes in first alumni and those who are continuing their first journey either as a volunteer or a mentor. Click on students and graduates to learn more about their internship opportunities and some other neat things they have, including their rotational programs you can learn about too. And thanks again to Stryker for their continued support of First Updates Now. So we'll be drawing for that giveaway in just a little bit in chat, but we're going to take some questions that we have in here. And I'm always going to butcher names from live chat as always. But do have to ask, we alluded to it a little bit before, but I'm going to ask the question verbatim from them, for I Obsessing. So was there actually inspiration from Roboruckus and forcing teams to, quote, play the game? So where was the inspiration from Roboruckus as it deals with the game pieces sort of thing? Like, what made you choose that? Or was there anything else from Roboruckus that was inspired in this game?
I can take this one. I have a pretty good answer for it, Kevin.
Sure.
So I know, again, I'm not speaking on behalf of the GDC, but I know that it was a core tenet of this game for the robots to cross the barrier to get game pieces. And they didn't say it out loud, but it was very much they didn't want to have the same game twice, which if there were no rules surrounding entry and scoring of where robots could be, with respect to the game pieces, I know it was in the back of their minds that while the Roboruckus challenge was great and the robots were great, they were looking for the robots to have to cross the barrier for this particular game. And that I know for sure was a conversation piece with them. And Kevin hit on this a little bit, but the game piece being similar, with the exception of the weights in it, is a sustainability move. Of allowing teams who have these to take advantage of the assets they already have, but also to minimize some supply chain risks, especially in the middle of pandemic land, where some supply chains that you don't think about are kind of in some ways they can be upside down, like right down to the plastics resins industry is pretty well affected by the events of what happened, especially with the even still thinking about it, the winter events that happened in Texas last year, and just the effects of the pandemic on the root core supply industries were mitigated, or moves were made to mitigate them when thinking about this game. And having a good supply chain for the game piece was really critical when moving forwards with game development to the GDC. They really cared about this, and they cared that teams could, at minimum, have the game pieces available to them in quantities.
All right, next coming up from Peyton is asking, what are your thoughts on the one game piece limit versus other years where there's been multiple game pieces held? He says it seems like scoring will be lower than in previous years.
I think it's a good challenge. I come from long ago being a robot driver where, I wish I could have played these games where it was more cycle based. The games that I got to play were much more about position, and as Tyler can attest to as well. But
much more boring too.
Being able to show off some of your programming skills and your driver skills, and repeating that task, but then adapting to how that, especially the balance of the scoring areas this year, the shipping hubs, the balance of that and how it changes. If you were able to just take several game pieces and dump them on there, that's cool, and I like that too. But I think the having to do it one at a time and seeing there's not a lot of space on this field for 4 robots to maneuver and get in and get out and get those game pieces.
And especially
I'm really
not hit those shipping hubs.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how that drives design this year and maybe break some paradigms.
So next time we got a couple more to go through here. From Keter M says, do all parts manufacturers know the game before kickoff, or is it just AndyMark knows about it to make game-related parts? There's kind of a multi-answer to that, I know, but I don't know if one of you want to take that.
I can answer that one, and I certainly cannot speak for First and what their policies are and how exactly they bring other suppliers into the fold and when that happens. I know that there is some level of it that it's not a complete surprise, but to the exact details, I'm not aware of that specific relationship that First and the game design committee has with other suppliers.
Is there anything you can talk about, like in regards to like the First Supplier Summit, maybe, and kind of what that entails?
That's a good question. With the pandemic this year, there was a virtual summit this year that was held kind of in like a virtual classroom, which is kind of unique. Most of that was relating to some higher level topics, not so much as to what's next year's game and what's that doing, coming up like that. None of that was discussed, but it's definitely a place where all the different suppliers and key individuals at First get a chance to get together and, whether in person or virtually in person, discuss some of those topics and how things are going to move forward.
All right, a couple last questions coming up. I'm obsessing with another one with a very direct question. It says, our field was delivered today, and I'm going to have to be assembling it tomorrow. Any heads up about easy to mess up parts or other tips you have?
Yeah, definitely. Like before you even unpack the boxes, I recommend you watch the videos we have on our YouTube channel for how to assemble things. They show you some of these gotchas, especially the order of assembly for the barrier. That requires attention to detail to make sure it is centered on the playing field that you're building it on. That's probably the biggest one, is making sure you start at the right groove or specific tab on the tile as you're putting it on. It's probably the big one to pay attention to. And also one that I've kind of seen in the community is paying attention to the orientation of the carousel scrapers. When you're building it on a full-size competition field, make sure that they, the tip of them or the vinyl cap is pointing towards the audience, not along that front wall, because that will change your autonomous routines and change exactly where you're supposed to be. And then the instructions, albeit they're quite simple for following the shipping hubs, that is the way to assemble them. if you try to assemble them in a different order, there's a way where the way the press fits work and the way the pieces stack, that it looks like you're going to get it assembled, you'll get stuck, where you can't actually press the pieces together. So follow those like word for word, to make sure you get your shipping hubs assembled correctly, because otherwise you might not be able to get that last pipe in. Those are really the big ones that I know of. Kevin, do you know of any more?
Yeah, I would also say just pay very close attention to your offsets when it comes to the barrier placement. It's easy to get the barrier offset by a ½ inch one way or another because of the way that the under-tiled plates have to be arranged in the certain locations on the tabs of the tiles. So read through that a few times before you start it and make sure you understand what you're looking at.
Yeah, in the assembly guide, there's a big flyer in the box when you open it that points you to exactly where to get to the paper assembly guides. What's a little bit different this year is because the way that the field's designed, the field setup guide and the like field assembly guide, which are usually kind of different documents, where usually you build an element and then arrange it on the field in the field setup guide. They're really intertwined this year because both the carousel and the barriers really like do best when they're assembled with field components. Make sure you read them both, because they share similar content, but they really talk about a lot of those gotchas as well. If written text information is more digestible for you, they're on pretty much every page that, or especially the page that shows the big how you order the fields, the big configurable page of when you're buying a partial or half, whatever. It's at the bottom of that page, the assembly guide there.
And we do have that link in chat, by the way, if you're interested in checking out the playlist for that and the videos that are included with it. Last question, and we're going to wrap up here, Payne, with one last one. What will it take to get the AndyMark staff to live commentate our FTC events?
That's a good one.
And in general, and Nick, I know you can probably contribute this with me. Man, I'd love to see more of that, because we've seen that at off seasons, right? There's been some additional things that. I know Texas Cup did a little bit more for FTC. We did some with MTI as well. It'd be great to see some more of that with the live season. I don't see why there's any reason why people might not be able to do a little bit more than general. And who knows? Maybe somebody from AndyMark will do it at some point.
Yeah, that live commentary really adds that +1 polish on every event that it happens at. But in general, a different way to answer that question is a lot more of our staff than you might think actually volunteer at events in Indiana, specifically First Tech Challenge events. Last year I was a referee, and that was a new experience I'd never done before. I'd refereed Vex Robotics competition and First Lego League, but I'd never done FTC, and that was a fun, unique experience that a lot of us are finding roles like that around local to us to get more ingrained into the community and kind of be boots on the ground, so to speak, to experience what the teams are experiencing at these events.
Well, thanks a lot to AndyMark. We're going to draw for our winner of the gift card, and that's going to be Peyton. All right, so congratulations, Peyton, for getting the gift card. Yeah, lots of rigged emotes in chat, please. So Peyton, I'm sure I have your contact, but just shoot me your email just so I can get that over to Mary. And thanks again to AndyMark for that. And of course, on YouTube, we're going to have some instructions for you if you're interested in winning that as well. I think we're going to have you comment what your favorite FTC game was in order to do that, but we'll have some instructions for that as well. So thanks again to Nick and Kevin from AndyMark for dropping in and telling us more about, of course, AndyMark and their interactions with Freight Frenzy and everything else you have going on. Before we leave real quick, Nick, Kevin, anything else you want to add before we hop off? It's been great to see you guys. Just want to say that, by the way. So.
Yeah, it was great to see you too, Tyler, and thanks for having us on. And I just want to say good luck to all the teams out there, and I can't wait to see what they all come up with.
Pretty much the same for me. Thanks again, Tyler. This is always a blast.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, of course, to AndyMark for coming on for this, and Nick and Kevin. And thank you to all of you watching either live here at twitch.tv/First Updates Now or on YouTube under First Updates Now. Don't forget, you can follow Fun FTC on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or First Updates Now on all those, plus a couple things on TikTok and a couple other places as well, too. AndyMark, I saw you're doing a couple TikToks as well now, so that's the court. We're all fellow kids. We're in on the trend now, right? So, but we can't wait to see what new things are coming up. Of course, we'll see you next time on FTC Recap. We're going to be taking a little bit of a break from live shows for that, but we'll have a lot of stuff coming up on YouTube later on. So thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll see you next time on FTC Recap. Talk to you then. Thanks to Kettering University for their support of this video. Don't just sit in class. Kettering University is the only school in the U.S. that allows you to work as an engineer your first year with their 3-month on, 3-month off co-op programs. If you are a U.S. student grades 8 through 12, scan the QR code to stay up to date on info and events happening at Kettering and get a free Kettering t-shirt when you sign up by December 12th, 2021. We'd like to thank Stryker for their continued support of First Updates Now. Stryker's Internship Portal is now open and available. Discover internships and rotational programs located around the world, including their headquarters in Michigan, when you go to careers.stryker.com and click on Students and Graduates. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay up to date on our new videos. Keep the conversation going and provide your input to our content. Watch our live shows at twitch.tv/firstupdatesnow. Join our Discord at discord.gg/firstupdatesnow and check out Fun FTC on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and First Updates Now on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter.